Hello guys, in this video I would like to share with you a video from the Tableau educational website. It's a very interesting video, and I thought it's maybe more interesting for you to watch a video rather than me just explaining. And let's get started.
Crosstabs, also called data tables, are a very common way to present data. Crosstabs are not highly visual, however, they can be a great reference. Crosstabs can...
So crosstabs are also the same as tables, and even though they are not highly visual, but they are very important as a reference.
Can also be used as part of a dashboard for setting up filters or drilling down from summary visualizations to more detailed information. They're also a great way to check your data for accuracy as you're building more visual charts.
Yeah.
In this lesson, you'll learn how to make a crosstab using employment projection data.
I probably don't have this file for projection data, but we could use the same, like it's all about how to create crosstabs. I'm going to also create a crosstab with you with the data that we have in hand, but right now I don't have this data.
I've connected to a spreadsheet of employment projections. I'd like to show the 2014 employment numbers by education level. There are a lot of visualizations we could use, but since this will be for a reference, we'll use a crosstab. To start, I'll drag 2014 actual employees to the view, then add typical education. This automatically generates a crosstab.
So we were able to create a crosstab by dragging a measure here into the view and a dimension into either the columns or rows. I told you earlier that if you want to start with a visualization, you double-click measure, then double-click dimension. But if you start with a dimension, double-click dimension, and then double-click measure, most likely you would be creating a crosstab as well. So over here, we just dragged the measure into the view and the dimension into either the row or the column.
If you want to see your data source, you don't need to build a crosstab. Click the View Data button to see the data Tableau is working with. If we had calculated fields, those would be included here as well. You can't edit data or metadata from here, but it can sometimes help to reorient yourself to your data. By default, a maximum of 10,000 rows will display. If you'd like to see more records, you can change this number by clicking the Get Data box and typing in a number. You can also drag and drop columns if you'd like to see them side by side. When you're done, close the window. These changes are not saved to the data source. This is a nice start, but what if I want to compare the 2022 projections to the actual numbers from 2014? I can add another measure to this crosstab. I'll drag 2022 projected employment to the view. It's added beside the 2014 numbers. Notice that this automatically brings in measure names, measure values, and the measure value shelf. Measure names on the column shelf divides the space, so that both measure values are separate columns for each type of education. Using measure values as a label tells Tableau to include the data from the selected measures in the crosstab. The measure value shelf can be used to add, remove, or reorder the values displayed in the view. You'll also notice that measure names is on the filter card. If we right-click and select Filter, you can see that only the measures we have brought into the view are selected. It's important to remember that changing the measure names filter will change the measures that are included in the crosstab.
Yeah, you can add more measures through the filter.
If you drag and drop measure names to rows, you can restructure the format of the table. For example, if we drag measure names to rows, I can create a pane of data for each level of education.
You see?
Measure names here is telling Tableau, for each type of education, list each selected measure name on a separate row. We can see which measures are selected on the measure value shelf. Or, I can switch the order of measure values in education to create different panes. This shows each level of education within the employment projections. I liked measure names on columns. The measure value shelf holds each value that you'd like to display. If you'd like to add more measures to the view, like the 2014 hourly wage, you can either drag them over the other values on the view or drop them directly on measure values. If you want to change the order of the measures in the table, you can drag the fields to reorder them.
So now we would like to see how we could add borders, for example, to the table. So this is how we edit the grid lines. These grid lines are the horizontal and vertical lines, grid lines.
A common change people want with a crosstab is to see grid lines. To add grid lines, right-click on a value in the crosstab and select Format. Select Borders, and on the Rows page, change the cell drop-down to the type of border you'd like. I can set the width, color, and pattern of the grid lines here. You can see there are other changes I could make to the grid lines on this sheet as well.
Okay. Oh, okay, we're done. So I hope that was a very easy intro to crosstabs. We saw how to create a crosstab. We create a crosstab with at least one measure and one dimension. We start with dropping the, let's say the dimension into the view, or we drop one dimension, one measure. In any case, you can start by dropping the measure into the view, and then the dimension manually drop it into rows, for example, and then this will create a table. When you add more measures, one extra measure to the crosstab or to the table, what happens is, as you've seen in the video, the measure names is added automatically on the columns and also added under the marks card. So as if you want to add more and more measures, and also will be added on the filter, if you remember. If you want to add more measures, you can drag any measure you'd like into the view. You can add any measure you like immediately under the measure's name, or you can actually head to the filter. And in the filter, you can unselect or select adding more measures into the crosstab. So this is a summary of what we have done so far. Take a moment and pause the video, read the question, and try to answer it, and then come back to me. All right, guys, so the question is, what best describes the role of the measure names field, this measure names field, in the structure of this crosstabs? Here's the measure names field. So it is actually placed on the columns. Over here, the measure names field shows the columns and creates the columns. The field limits the typical educational data. No, that's not correct. The field adds the values to the view. Well, the field adds the values to the view, the values, these values. Not quite correctly. These values belong to each measure here under this bigger umbrella. The field creates the panes in the view. Actually, the arrangement of the measure names, either on columns, either when you put it line by line with the typical education dimension side by side on the row column, on the rows shelf, this what creates the panes in the field, the arrangement of it, this position. The field creates the columns of data. Oh, okay, it's not working. Why is this so? I think I have some, it froze, but I think this is the right answer. If it's not the right answer, I will type the right answer after the video, but I think this is the right answer though. All right, guys, I'm really sorry. I don't know what's up with my mouse. I think it kind of like it's not even the mouse, it's kind of like the interface kind of froze. So this is it for this video. I will see you in the next recording.